Federal Workforce Fallout is sponsored by Prince George's Community College.
You're watching Federal Workforce Fallout, where each week we break down the impacts to our neighbors and the federal workforce. I'm Larry Miller. Well, an update this week on the thousands of federal retirees still waiting on their much needed benefit checks. I checked in with Tawana Brown and Don Freeman. The two worked for USAID for decades. Their agency was dismantled by the Trump administration, and their applications have been caught up in an ongoing backlog, along with just under 50,000 other applicants as well. And as they wait, the bills are piling up and their patience waning.
Ms. Brown, we'll start with you. Kind of tell me, since the last time we saw you, what's happened? Have you received any money yet?
I have not received anything. We are 7 months in and still no payment.
And have you, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I also found out that they owe me for insurance. They were taken out on my daughter, and I was told that that was going to get paid as well. That was for 8.5 years that they were taking out unnecessary insurance, and I was supposed to get a check for that as well. Have not seen a check for anything as of yet, 7 months in.
If you had to sort of come up with a number in terms of how much you're due at this point, do you have a figure for that?
Probably close to $30,000 at least.
How are you getting by at this point?
Prayers, family, friends, and unemployment, which is only $400 a week, and that's going to end in another 2 weeks.
And after that point, then what?
I have no idea. I don't know where I'm going to go because unemployment said we cannot apply again for a year. But in a year, well, when our year time is up, the agency won't be around anymore. And the way I think it works is the agency pays our unemployment, but if the agency is no longer there, we aren't going to get unemployment either.
And have you reached out to National Finance Center, OPM, State Department? Have they said anything to you?
Nobody has given me any answers. We have a ticketing system that we have to go through. I've put in several tickets to try to find out the status of my case, and I get nothing back. We can't go into the system to look into the tickets because we no longer have our federal IDs to be able to access this. So it's just a hamster wheel, like a circle. You're just running around and around and chasing your tail, and nobody has any answers.
Yeah. What are those moments like for you? I mean, you're well composed now and clear, but I can imagine that there's some when it's quiet, you're by yourself. I can imagine your mind is running and racing.
Always, yes. And it's just the whole countdown now. I try to lean on my faith. I am blessed to have a wonderful family, but I can't expect them to sustain me and my household and their household as well. This has been extremely stressful, and I'm trying to be composed as much as I can, but it's really hard. I actually see a therapist on a regular basis because of this. It's hard, very hard.
Have you reached out to the union at all? Have they said anything to you?
We were not allowed to be a part of the union when we were working. However, since we have been in retirement, we're allowed to join the union. They are working to get whatever resolve they can, I guess, because the way they dismantled the agency was illegal. So I'm not sure what all is going on, but they do have moving parts and pieces. And I did sign up to be a part of the union. So hopefully, whatever repercussions they reap, that I could reap some of the benefits from all this stress.
Are you concerned that you could lose everything?
Very much so. Very much so.
How real of a reality is that for you?
Very. I have bill collectors calling me, and the only thing I can say is I work for the government for 39 years. I haven't been paid in 7 months, so I can't give you what I don't have. So please stop calling me unless you can call somebody and get me paid. Then I can pay you.
Ms. Freeman, I'd imagine you're in the same boat as well.
I am in the boat. The difference between Tawana and I is that I was able to at least tap into Social Security, but that's not the answer. We're still having to pay our vision and dental out of pocket. And like Tawana said, our unemployment runs out in 2 weeks because she and I started at the same time. But there have been no extensions because I did reach out to unemployment to see if they had put any extensions in place, kind of like they did in COVID, excuse me. And there are no extensions in place, and they know that people are hung up. I mean, I feel that this is designed to traumatize us. I think it's cruel. I feel my heart really goes out for people like Tawana that have to depend on OPM, even for their supplemental Social Security, where you're not at the age of 62, but you would get a supplemental, but all of that is hinged on our packets being processed. So yes, I'm in the same boat. I mean, you can't give something that you don't have, but that doesn't mean do I want to lose my dental? Do I want to lose my vision? The only saving grace so far is that they're not overburdening us with our health care. But I have an employee plus one. I have a son in college. So that has greatly impacted things. He's looking to shift, but I'm not in a financial posture to make those kinds of things happen. And my goal was to continue to work until he successfully completed school. And all of that has been snatched from me. So, yes, the anxiety is there, and I, too, have faith, and that is what has sustained me, because anything beyond that, I'd be cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
No, I certainly understand that. Now, do either of you have applications that are still with the National Finance Center?
Both of us. Mine has
Both of
been
us.
there since December.
Okay. They sent me a statement today saying that NFC will continue to collaborate with USAID and OPM to ensure NFC can get the outstanding retirement cases processed as quickly as and accurately as possible. When you hear that statement from the National Finance Center, what do you think?
I think it's just a bunch of hogwash because at the end of the day, you've had the 90 business days for me. Yes, we have to take, and that's to include when they say 90 work days, it's my understanding that holidays don't count. So, okay, my packet's been there since December. I'm not really certain, and I know that they're inundated, but at the end of the day, Mr. Miller, that's not our problem. You dumped us off the rolls. You didn't care, and I don't really care about your shortages. We need our money. We need to be paid, and we need to be paid now. It's just not fair. The whole process has been so disheartening.
And I'm afraid because my package I was just told that it just went on April 2nd. So 90 calendar days puts me way beyond the 2 more weeks that I'm going to get unemployment. So then what? Where am I stuck?
What do you mean it went up on April 2nd? What do you mean by that?
April 2nd is when it got to NFC.
Oh,
so
wow.
My package just got there and I left in September.
And did they give you any explanation for why it just made it to NFC in
We
April?
No, we can't talk to anybody. We just have to look on the online retirement account and that'll tell you where your package is.
And
so they've made it all pretty and it says, woo, your payroll is here, you're here in payroll or NFC. Well, that's real cute and pretty, but I need money in my pocket.
All right, so why is the Office of Personnel Management still reporting a backlog in retirement benefit applications? I posed that question to OPM Director Scott Cooper. Director Cooper, I want to get your sense in terms of where we are with the backlog of federal retirement applications. We're still getting sort of complaints from particularly USAID retirees who say it's been 7 months, still haven't gotten a check, things are getting tough for them.
Sure. So we're making good progress. We're below 50,000 inventory now, which is good because we were up very, very high before. And our production continues to be very strong. So in the month of March, we processed 22,000 applications in a month. just to give your viewers a perspective, our traditional throughput is about 8,000 cases a month. So we did almost 3 times what our normal production is. Now, that's probably not sustainable for every month, but we're making good progress. I'm not as familiar with the specifics around USAID, but I would say where we definitely have had some bottlenecks are sometimes we still have some things obviously that are getting stuck in the HR and the payroll sides of things. I think you and I have talked about this before that, kind of it takes some time, unfortunately, for us to get things. But on the electronic side, we're seeing kind of production times in the 30 to 40-day time period, which is great. And that's about 3 times faster than what it takes us to get on paper. So we recognize obviously we have more work to do. Obviously, our goal is to get people retired as quickly as possible. But I feel like we're on track, at least for what we're doing. And the electronic changes have made a huge difference in terms of our ability to process cases timely.
Have you figured out sort of the workflow issues and sort of addressing where those bottlenecks are? Because we've gotten reports from the National Finance Center that there are a lot of applications that are stuck there as well. Is there any sort of plan to deal with sort of the broader issue of trying to get all of government together in like one accord?
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, so we're doing a couple things right now. So one is, specifically as you mentioned, NFC. We have been on calls with them, and in some cases with the agencies that are obviously they're supporting. And we are trying to figure out ways to kind of pull things out of the process and expedite them faster. So in the case of, for example, IRS, we were able to take about 2,000 applications that were kind of stuck there and just pull them directly into OPM and just process them directly, recognizing that there was some data that would ultimately come later to help us clean things up. So that's kind of one thing we're doing. The other thing we're doing is we're testing right now a process where we're going to try to skip the payroll providers completely in the adjudication process. So again, as you and I have talked about, it's roughly about a 45 to 60-day window, unfortunately, on average, where things are kind of processed in payroll. Mm-hmm. What we are now testing is, can we just skip that and take it directly into OPM? The benefit of that is that we could put people into interim pay, 45 to 60 days faster. And then we would just put the application into a little bit of an abeyance until the payroll folks give us the final payroll information, and then we'll just clean up the application and then put it into final processing. So at a minimum, what that would allow us to do is to kind of shave off that 45 to 60-day wait time that we have and get people into, I think we've talked about this, what we call interim pay. Interim pay traditionally is about 80% of what we estimate their full annuity to be. The good news, I think, as you and I talked about, Larry, before, is we changed our interim pay process because we knew obviously that there was going to be a big surge here. So today, 100% of people who, once their application gets to us, are within interim pay within 7 days of us receiving it. That's great because that number used to be about 30% in prior years. But what the problem we have again is we're waiting that 45 to 60 days in payroll before it even gets to us. So we're now testing a process, as I said, to basically skip payroll, which would allow us to get people into interim pay 45 to 60 days faster than what we're already doing today.
House Democrats said that they sent you a letter detailing what they say are some concerns that they have about lack of information and transparency as it relates specifically to this issue. Right. Have you responded to that letter? And I think for the concerns that were raised, have you addressed them?
Yeah, I just signed off on a reply to that letter last night. So I don't know if it's gone out yet, but you'll see that very shortly. Mm-hmm. Look, I think we're being as transparent as we can. So, they raised a lot of these same questions, which is okay, like, what are you doing to work with the HR and the payroll providers, which is a very fair question, and we're working closely with them. Again, I think the best alternative will be for us to find ways to just, quite frankly, reimagine the process, which will be good. As you know, we've got this big HR consolidation project we're working on to consolidate all of the HR systems. This would be a major benefit once that program's fully launched, which is, again, part of the reason we have to go to HR and payroll is because we don't have the canonical history of all these individuals because all their information is scattered in various places. So that's one big benefit that will come out of this HR consolidation project as well, is we will be able to reimagine the entire process. But yes, we've shared with them what we're doing. I mean, our goal remains the same, and I feel like we're on track, which is by June 30th, our expectation is that more than 90% of all applications will be electronic. The outstanding categories we've had historically were number one, as you know, it took a while for a number of the payroll providers to get on board to the electronic system. So a huge number of the DRP related applications are paper instead of electronic, which obviously is not great. But that trend has started to turn. So we track every day what's the incoming paper versus electronic, and we're now firmly in the category where electronic obviously is far outpacing paper. So we're getting to the end of the paper, which is good. And then the other big category of cases that we haven't yet automated are disability cases, for example, which are more complicated, and what we call deferred cases. So these are people who leave the government, but they don't yet qualify for retirement. And so they have to wait for a deferred period of time. But our development plan is to have both of those categories done. So by June 30th, the only things that will be missing will be some of the intelligence community agencies, which obviously have a very, very different process. They represent fewer than 5% of our retirement cases. So our plan will be, we will deal with those in time, obviously, but I want to kind of deal with the 95% before we get to the electronic processing for intelligence related areas.
There seems to be an information issue too, in terms of retirees trying to get information about the status of their applications, especially when they're caught up in like either NFC or some other agency or HR department. What do you say to those workers that are trying to get information about where their application may be like caught up, and they're trying to ensure it gets pushed along? It seems like they can't get information until it gets to OPM, and by that time they've already waited 5-6 months.
Yeah. No, look, I'm very sympathetic to it. And actually, that was one of the questions that we had in this Democratic letter that came out. So we have gone back to the HR agencies and to the payroll providers and said, look, you guys are responsible for ultimately shepherding your retirees through this process. And we've helped them understand what the resources are that are available to them. So look, I'm very sympathetic to that problem. We're doing at least what we can on the OPM side to make sure that those agencies have what they need. Obviously, look, I mean, this is not an excuse, but look, I can't control, where the agencies prioritize their time. But we certainly recognize it. As I mentioned, in areas where, because we can now track the data electronically, we can see by agency where everything is in the process. We send those reports out to those HR agencies and payroll providers on a weekly basis to help them understand how they're tracking relative to, kind of other agencies. So we're doing everything we can, at least, to provide them the information and then encourage them to make sure that they are doing proactive outreach to their clients. But look, I'm very sympathetic to it. And I think, look, as I said, the long-term solution to this problem, which I realize, doesn't help the immediate folks, is if we can have the canonical history of everybody's actual, employment information in the government in a single place, a lot of these things like waiting for HR and waiting for payroll, quite frankly, will just, no longer be bottlenecks in the process.
Last question for you. There was concern about at least a recent proposal from OPM to request more information about the medical information of the federal workforce. At least the notice that was provided says that this is supposed to be a measure to allow the federal government to ensure that what it's paying, that they're getting the best bang for the buck, and also to watch out for costs. People have raised privacy concerns. Can you address that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this was a Paperwork Reduction Act notice that went out back in December, which was the initial notice period. We got some comments on that, as you may know. Before we do anything, there'll be a second round of notice period and comments. I want to be totally clear. Look, this is exactly as we said, which is the whole goal of this is how do we figure out ways to reduce fraud, waste, and abuse when they happen? So my very simple articulation of this is, we have an OIG and we have a GIO. They're really good at finding bad actors, but these things are all years in arrears, and then by the time these things happen, there's no money left to recover. So it does nothing actually for the people who pay into premiums every year on these programs. So our goal is to get the information so that in a real-time basis, if we see, so I'll just give an example. There was just a case in Georgia that was filed by the DOJ that our teams worked on, of a therapist who was basically billing more than 24 hours in a day. And this therapist was also working with individuals who were kicking back, allegedly. They were allegedly kicking back parts of their billings to these patients to kind of enable this potential fraud. I'm glad the OIG and DOJ found it. The problem is that was activities from like 2019 to 2022. There now is a public prosecution that is going to take place, this indictment. But there's no money left to recover, I'm quite certain, at the end of the day, because I'm sure that money's been spent. So this is the goal. Just to be totally clear with people, we do not need what's called PII, personally identifiable information. So we're not interested in looking at, we don't need to know, an individual who got it. We're just trying to get a data feed from the providers that allows us in real time to save premium dollars that our, employees and our annuitants are paying. So that's the goal here. Obviously, there's more to come on that. We haven't done anything on that yet. We've just put out that notice, but that's the purpose for what we're seeking.
I wonder, is there any, like, looking forward in all of this, are there any like sort of conversations that you guys have with the unions to sort of address any issues that they have about these policy changes? Because it seems like OPM comes out with a proposal in terms of what it would like to do. The union responds and is usually vehemently against some of these rule changes. And it always seems as if the two sides are just never really talking to each other. Has there been any sort of like movement about like maybe we should have a conversation with the unions in this?
Yeah, look, it's a great point. I wish that that's the way this world worked, is we all just sit down around the table and talk about our problems and deal with things. And again, I'm not trying to be facetious about it, but look, I think it's a great point, and look, I'm very open to those conversations. I think historically you're right, which is what's happened is kind of the MO in this town is you announce something, you wait for the opposition to deal with it, you try to to tell you what the problems are, and then you go back and forth. Yeah, if I were operating in the private sector, that's exactly what I would do. And look, maybe your push is a good one, which is we just need to do it.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right, which is, look, I think the dance here is a very inefficient way to do things. And look, I'm very open to better ways to try to make that happen.
Okay. All right, Director Cooper.
Our thanks to Director Cooper for his time. Meantime, the delayed federal retirement benefits have gotten the attention of House Democrats who are demanding answers. I spoke with Congressman James Walkinshaw. We also talked about the ongoing partial government shutdown.
Congressman, walk me through sort of the situation right now for federal workers. I know you, and as well as some of your Democratic colleagues and even some Republicans, have really been on the forefront of trying to protect federal workers really on a number of fronts, not workplace protections. It's also fair pay, but I know fair pay is something that has come up recently as it relates specifically to the budget from the Trump administration.
So one of the first things I did when I was sworn into Congress last year is take over the leadership of legislation that Congressman Connolly had introduced for many years, the FAIR Act, to provide federal workers the pay increase that actually a 1990 law says that they should get each year based on the Consumer Price Index and locality pay increase. Unfortunately, last year, President Trump provided federal workers with a 1% pay raise, far below the pay raise that folks in the military received, far below the pay raise that federal law enforcement received, far below the average private sector pay raise. And then in the budget proposal that he submitted to Congress last week, he proposed a pay freeze for civilian federal workers. So along with the other co-chairs of the Federal Workforce Caucus, Congressman Steny Hoyer and Senator Chris Van Hollen, we put out a statement calling on the administration to give federal workers, civilian federal workers, a fair pay raise that they deserve, just to keep pace with the cost of living and to prevent the pay gap between the private sector and the federal workforce from growing even larger. We're going to be fighting for that through the annual appropriations process, which is underway now. But I think right now, in this moment, that's one of the most critical fights on behalf of federal workers.
Some would also say, too, that general workplace protections is also a critical fight as well, in addition to the fair pay. Even as we talk right now, there's still an ongoing government shutdown, partial government shutdown that is going on. So help us with that component of it as well, because I think for many federal workers, when you talk with them, they say, we would like to get to a point where we're no longer sort of caught in the crosshairs of Congress and the executive, that when there is disagreement, we don't end up losing a paycheck and not being able to pay the bills.
Yeah, look, I think when we talk about workplace protections for federal workers, we have to go back to DOGE and the DOGE chainsaw that slashed through our federal workforce last year, 300,000 job losses, tens of thousands in our region. Many of those firings, illegal, folks pushed out of their federal jobs, toxic workplaces across many agencies. The leadership of the administration, Russ Vought, saying his goal was to, quote, traumatize federal workers. We've seen efforts, successful in some cases, to strip collective bargaining rights or union rights that provide for fair pay, benefits, and safe workplace. Right now, during this DHS shutdown, which is still ongoing, even though pursuant to the executive order the president recently signed, DHS employees are getting their paychecks. But with the budget submission this week, we saw the administration renewing and doubling down on their effort to privatize TSA. So as we've gone through this chaos in our airports because TSA workers needlessly went without their paychecks for weeks, we see an effort now to privatize TSA. That sends exactly the wrong signal to the folks who continued working to keep the country moving for weeks, even when they weren't provided their paychecks. So we're going to continue to fight on all those fronts.
And do you see any sort of likely legislation on the horizon that deals specifically with that issue of protecting workers during these shutdowns and ensuring that even while there might be gridlock on Capitol Hill, that folks are still getting paid?
So I introduced legislation before this latest DHS shutdown even started called the True Shutdown Fairness Act to ensure that in any future shutdown, federal workers continue to get their paychecks. And look, we've been moving in that direction anyway by executive order or executive decision. The Trump administration has, in many cases, after week-long or weeks-long delays, started paying different categories of federal workers. We shouldn't have different categories or tiers of federal workers. Every federal worker should get their paycheck, even if there's a shutdown that's ongoing because Congress and the White House can't come to a compromise or a negotiated solution. I have a lot of Democratic co-sponsors on that legislation, still hoping to get some Republicans to sign on to it with me, but we're going to keep pushing for that.
You can count on WUSA 9 to stay on top of the reductions to the federal workforce, those affected, and what it means for our communities. In the meantime, scan the QR code on your screen. It will take you to a special section of WUSA9.com dedicated to our coverage of this story. And of course, we'll keep you updated right here on federal workforce fallout. We appreciate you being here. Take care, and we'll see you again soon.
You've learned a lot in life, on the job, in the military, raising a family. At Prince George's Community College, that experience can count as college credit. You could earn up to 15 college credits towards your degree just for what you already know. Eligible Prince George's County grads can even attend tuition-free with the Promise Scholarship. So, what's your game plan? Turn your journey into a degree at Prince George's Community College.